Welcome to the Hustle and Flow podcast.
A platform we use to explore varying perspectives and opinion through candid conversation.
We chat about philosophy, business, and all things life. I'm Shaun the Hustle.
And I'm Les the Flow.
Let's go. So my turn for a topic today. Mm-hmm. And the topic I've chosen for us today is sovereignty.
Oh, yeah? Cool.
So when I say sovereignty, what comes to mind for you?
I think it's about a level of responsibility to yourself, and seeing yourself as, of the highest importance and holding that in the highest regard. I think responsibility has a big part to play in being sovereign in, I think, the context that you're going to be talking about it today, or we might be talking about today. It has a real, I guess, honoring of who you are or who you want to be, and upholding that with the greatest sense of integrity. So yeah, that's what I sort of think about.
I'd echo all of those thoughts and sentiments around sovereignty. And I guess, when I think about sovereignty, I think about being self-governing, right? And as you said, really taking responsibility for yourself. Because in essence of the definition of the word, right, sovereignty is being self-governing, having your own rules and being essentially a law unto yourself.
Yep.
And I guess when people make that statement, like being a law unto yourself, it's generally in the context of you being unruly or outside the bounds of what people class as the regular law. But I don't see it like that. Being a law unto yourself is about living your life the way that you see fit and that you think is right for you, and having integrity while doing it. And that's a word you use as well, which is very important, which is integrity. And I guess I want to talk about this today because of, just being out in the world today and seeing how people carry themselves and conduct themselves, and also mindful about how I carry myself in the world, and sovereignty being of more importance than ever, I think. I think it's always been important, but we're in uncharted territories in terms of the context of all of our lives right now.
Yeah.
So I think more than ever, thinking about how we operate, how we think, and how we carry ourselves is important during this time.
Yeah, totally. And, we can reflect back to like maybe the origins of the word and whence it was used, I suppose. And it was something that was more used in a collective context, like a sovereign state or something like that. Do you know what I mean? And it is no different to when you see yourself as a sovereign being, as someone who is very clear on what values and principles you yourself as a being, as an individual, uphold and hold true and feel drawn towards. It is your truth, and for you to act according to those, it's fine. It is fine as long. And I think this is something that you always say, as long as you're not hurting anyone in the process, right? And in talking about the current context, of course, 100%. I always echo the sentiment of discovering and living one's own truth. And if we reflect on society today, it is a very mob type mentality that people have. They do sort of fade into the crowd a lot, and it seems like it is a autonomous thing as well. It seems like there is a lack of connection with self, understanding of truth, and then being able to derive value and principles for oneself, and then uphold them in a sovereign way. Definitely. I mean, these times, in modern times, it is becoming more and more apparent that we do, as individuals, need to discover our own truth and find our own way. And I guess this is the challenge for a lot of people now. It's
Yep.
becoming more and more apparent. It's coming to light that shit that collectively governs us isn't all so rosy and powerful and quote unquote right.
Yeah.
There is a lot of holes being poked in everything that we thought was the greatest power on earth, or the most I guess the overarching power or overarching governing system that keeps the world together.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And in terms of collectives and people operating as a collective as well, you mentioned that sovereignty essentially comes from, in the old days, being a sovereign nation and being a collective group and, operating as a whole unit that governs yourselves. And that still happens, right? But I think happens in a much different way.
Yeah.
And for a much different purpose. And it feels like these days, man, when people band together, it's kind of to shut something else out or to essentially shit on something else. That's what it feels like to me at the moment. What do you think about that?
Well, I think it's also just
Or to oppose something.
Yeah, it could be. That I feel like it's also to find something to believe in, to find something that rings true. I think there's a semblance of gravitation towards some semblance of truth or recognition or alignment in that regard. And that's why I feel like a lot of groups, whether it's religion or whether it's some sort of extremist belief or activist group, anything like that. It's very easy to just jump into those for people when they, it's like a headline type attraction. You read something that appeals to you in some way, and without really understanding what the fundamentals are behind them, you'll jump in and jump on board and become a dogmatic supporter and activist or advocate for those sorts of things.
Yeah.
So I think that stems from, a lack of knowing or belonging to something or owning some sort of semblance of truth for oneself. So as a knee-jerk reaction, we might naturally cling to something that presents some semblance of, a click within us that says, that kind of resonates with me. I'm going to dive in and feel like I'm part of something and have some sort of belief of truth in my actions and how I live in this world.
Yeah. No, and I'm glad you've gone down this path because, it's something I do want to talk about and kind of what I was getting at is, it feels like people want to belong so bad that they'll, as you said, they'll latch onto something and take on these dogmatic beliefs of a group or a system or whatever it is, because they found one part of it that they agree with. And I think the danger in that is when you align yourself with something without actually looking at the whole picture, you're giving away your power. And you're also, I think, compromising your own identity.
Totally.
And you're compromising with yourself without realizing.
Yep.
If you're someone who identifies as like either you're right wing or left wing, and you take those things as absolute, you're kind of giving your power away to whatever that group dictates itself to be and what the beliefs are and them to become yours. And you might not agree with everything, right? You might not agree with everything that that group believes in or that sect believes in. And I think it's also easy to give that power away and that responsibility, because then you don't have to do the hard work of figuring out what you believe in, and also what is sometimes the hard work of defending that. There are some beliefs that we have as people and individuals that are worth defending.
Totally.
There are. And, I think once you ascribe to a collective with unwavering, I guess, without any sort of compromise to that, right? Or examination and willingness to push back, even within that group, you find yourself in a dangerous spot where you might be compromising yourself in ways you don't want to. And you may start acting in a way because of that doesn't align with who you really want to be and what you truly believe in your heart of hearts. And, it's very hard, I think, especially in this current climate, to shut out what it seems like massive noise from groups that put pressure on people, right? Because essentially, when you think about it, if there's a group that has its own beliefs, they want those beliefs to flourish and for other people to take them on, right? And if you got little old you that doesn't believe that against a collective, it's hard sometimes, right? But if you look back throughout history, it's people that have stood up for what they believe in that have prevailed and made things better, generally, right? Some have done that and it's had very bad results for people, but then, it's usually counteracted and things turn good. I'm also, like, on a side note, could be argued right now for sure, but people keep talking about how the world's turning to shit and, everything's so bad and in the olden days and stuff. And I still think it's like the greatest time to be alive.
Totally.
Right. I really believe that.
Well, those judgments and perspectives, it's all relative, right?
Yeah.
It truly is.
Yeah. And I've never lived in the olden days, but from what I've experienced, things keep getting better, man.
Yeah. And to me, it's, to just touch on that point, to cling to, it is to cling to a semblance of normality that, is a little bit delusional in my mind, because I always talk about things that change is inevitable. The world moves in a cyclic manner, just like the seasons of nature, and I always talk about this. And it is kind of naive to think that once there is some semblance of normality, that it can be held and continued forever. This is just a tipping point, of what maybe it may be chaotic, it may be just a drastic change. It's going to be a shake-up for sure, though. It's going to be there is no return to quote-unquote normal. We've talked about normal before, and to me, there's no such thing, really. I want to also add on a point that you said before in terms of some things are worth fighting for in terms of your own beliefs and truth. I would bolster that thought and say that an individual's truth, once it is found, it is the only thing to live for. It truly is. Like, if you find whatever your truth is, whatever your heart speaks, whatever you believe and hold dear and true in your soul, like with the greatest purity, no external corruption, anything like that. If you're able to find that, then that is what your life is, supposed to be lived for, in my mind, So 100%, I mean, if you compromise or give up any of that, then you're giving away a piece of who you are, and it is as simple as that. It doesn't matter to me. And this is like the challenge of living in a civilized world, in that there is a collective belief or collective notion of what we should be or how we should act. But then we are all individuals, right? And we all hold our own unique truths. And to align 100% one way or another to what someone else has, constructed, is to give away a piece of yourself,
Yeah, I would agree with that, man. I would wholeheartedly agree with that. And the other thing about sovereignty that comes to mind for me, in the same vein as what we're talking about right now, is taking ownership, right? And Jocko Willing talks about it all the time. It's his concept, extreme ownership. And other people talk about it as well. And I know that you and I both have taken on that approach in our lives, right? And that the things that happen to us, how we experience things and what's happened in our lives is our responsibility and is a result of our actions and our own perspectives and thoughts. And I really do truly believe that, that, everything is my responsibility. Everything I experience is my responsibility. How I feel about things is my responsibility. I never have that feeling anymore where, do I get emotional in things? Yes, obviously I do. Do things, trigger my emotions and put me in a state of mind that's where I don't want to be? 100%. All right. But I'm also fervently aware that that is my reaction to something. And how I respond and think about it after that initial reaction is my responsibility. Right? And therefore...
It needn't be the same. It needn't be the same.
Yeah.
And that's like a very clear thing that is very important to point out.
Yeah. And for that reason, everything is my responsibility. And I take ownership of that. If someone says something that I don't like that for whatever reason. And that's on me. It's not on the person that said it. Right? And, people always make the argument of like, oh, there's things that are out of your control that happen to you. And what about that? Like if someone you love got hit by a car, then what? Well, they could have been standing somewhere else. They chose to stand there, or they chose to cross the road. They were in that space for whatever reason at whatever time. I'm not saying it's fair, but I'm saying is the choices we make lead to the things that prevail and how things play out. Not always fair, but that's the reality of shit. It is,
Totally.
man.
I mean, like the saying that, and you don't like this very much, and it depends on context, I believe. I think in this context, it's you agree with it and you align with it, and it is what it is. It truly is. Like, and the way you've explained it, it's not anything that is difficult to understand. It's very rational. It's very logical, right? You think about anything that you do or anything that you feel, you have a choice to that, right? You truly do. And we've talked about this before as well, like how your life turns out, the outcomes of your life are just the sum of all the choices that you've made. And I'll hear people argue, how can you not be sad or not be angry and all these sorts of things? Like you said, like it's not that you're not going to feel these emotions. If you're human, you will. In the example of a loved one who passes away, of course you're going to feel sad about it, right? But and it's okay to do that. It's okay to express yourself emotionally. That is, of course, something that we should do. Like I actually advocate, full-hearted emotional expression. But at the same time, what do we do after that? That's the point. Like, do we allow that situation to crush us and debilitate us, or do we see it as, again, just like life, death is a natural part of existence, So it happens when it happens. It's out of our control. So
Yep.
how do we move forward from things like that,
Well, we take control.
Exactly.
We take control, right? And that statement, it is what it is. Yeah, I don't like it. But just because I don't like it doesn't mean it's not true. There are lots of situations where it is what it is. But the way I think about it, and see, this is me having sovereignty and control, is I believe it is what it is until it isn't. And when I say that, until it isn't, that's the part where I choose to take control, right? Of whatever the experience is, whatever the situation is, whatever is, I have a choice of how to respond to that. And I learned that, whenever something happens or there's a decision to be made, right? Because that's all we're doing in life is we're making decisions and choices that are stacking on top of each other that create our existence and our experience here, right? There's three things we can do. We can change it, we can accept it, or we can leave it. They're really your options, right? And we make the choice of which of those three we move forward with, right? So like if there's something that is, we can try to change it. Or if it's something that we choose to accept, that's our choice too.
Yep.
or we can leave. We can leave that the way it is, right? And with that also needs to come some form of acceptance because you've chosen not to change it, right? But you're making those choices. And with that, you're taking ownership, right? And you're exercising your sovereignty, I feel.
Yeah. And I think if you put it, I think a good way to sort of put those terms, like, it is what it is, it makes sense. And for me, it's applied always in an external sense. It is what it is are things that happen outside of us and are outside of our control,
Yep.
right? And the response is until it isn't, how we respond to such situation, and these sorts of things, they really, it's like age-old wisdom, truly is what age-old wisdom in terms of how to live in a sovereign manner in life, and it's to me, it's human wisdom, to its core, inherent, because thousands of years ago, this sort of wisdom was shared by, people in ancient Greece. I always talk about the Stoics, and it's a very Stoic way of looking at things. But at the same time, before even the Stoics, it's a very Taoist way of looking at life as well, an Eastern philosophical viewpoint in terms of looking at what is within and without our control, and simply, moving according to to me, right? Because I am a follower and believer of the Taoist ways, is that the only true nature, the true laws, are natural law. Those are the things that are truly out of our control. Like human laws, they're always interchangeable. They're always things that can be manipulated and altered, right? Although we live under their governance, they can always change. But natural law is something that is far beyond us, right?
For sure. And, there is plenty that's outside of our control, but how we choose to respond to it is our choice.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And that's our power, right? That's our power as humans. And I feel that a lot of times when people use the statement, it is what it is to let go of that responsibility, right?
Yeah.
And not having to do something about it after. It's like, oh, it is what it is. And you just leave it at that, right? When you have other options and I guess the thing that's screaming in the face is your choice to choose how to respond, right?
Yeah.
And there are plenty of stories and situations which we know about. Viktor Frankl, for example, in one of the worst possible situations you could find yourself in as a human, and his perspective is what changed things for him.
Totally.
He made a choice in the worst of circumstances to hold a perspective, right? And that's the power of it. That's the power of, not just accepting it is what it is and then doing nothing about it for yourself.
Yeah. And like Viktor Frankl is a really good example. And there are many people who have survived and spoken about, their experiences in the Holocaust and things like that. And Auschwitz and all those sorts of terrible like conditions. And if you think about in contrast or perspective wise to what we as modern humans would complain about on a daily basis versus the things that people in those sorts of concentration camps had to deal with and endure, and then come out with these still very positive perspectives on things in life, man, it shows you something like, and it is like a testament to the power of choice. It truly is.
Yeah, for sure. And I think this concept of extreme ownership is really important for people to understand, and also to understand that it's not a way to try and control something that shouldn't be controlled or that is not controllable.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, that's something that I, run into with people that challenge me on it. It's like but there are just things that are outside of your control that you can't do anything about. And I'm like, yeah, but then you're a victim.
Yeah.
And that's a choice.
Totally. I mean, that comes part with giving away your power.
Yeah.
You know, that victim mentality. You know, there is always a choice as to whether you want to seem as if what has happened to you, that particular circumstance, you are a victim of it, or you're not. You know, or you choose to change the frame or reframe it in a way that you are not a victim. It is just whatever it is. It is a external circumstance, and you happen to experience it, you know, and you can choose how you respond. And like to talk more on, I guess, sovereignty in the modern context, and perhaps like a level of difficulty, and maybe even like it may be even something that is seen as a negative thing to stand up and be an individual and represent your own beliefs and speak that openly.
Yep.
Because there are so many things that are, I guess, seen as outside of the conventional box.
Yep.
You know, and if those sorts of things are spoken, it is frowned upon at times. You know, and I myself have always felt something like this for as long as I can remember. You know, even as a kid, I can always remember just feeling like an outsider, but not wanting to speak it fully, you know, in 100% pure form, without some sort of, you know, veil on top of it to protect myself, you know, for the fear of whatever it is, being ostracized, you know, being judged. And that's the power of the collective and the societal mold and the conditioning that we've been put into, right? And I almost felt bad, in a sense, for wanting to do that, you know, because you'd be labeled an outcast, you'd be labeled a rebel. Oh, you know, you're a rebel, and that's a bad thing, you know. You're doing things against the grain and all that sort of stuff, right? But I see it very differently now, you know. I've seen it very differently for several years now. And this is, for me, stepping fully into my truth and reclaiming the power of who I am as an individual, you know. And it seems very, you know, cliche to say all these things, but this is just how it is expressed in modern times. And I hope that it's something that people can relate to or understand in this way. But it's not like a rebellion act, like, you know, middle fingers up to the world type thing, right? It's just standing up for your own truth. And there's no disrespect to anything else outside of that, right? Yeah. It's okay for us to disagree without, you know, being aggressive and opposing in that way.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I think this type of discussion between you and I and the dynamic that we hold, it's like testament to that. We come from very different angles, and we don't agree with everything that each other says. No, that's for sure.
No, we don't.
But, you know, we're able to still hold a very civil conversation and respect each other's viewpoints.
Yeah, and I think that's the key to it. It's like respect. And that's something that I want to talk about, because I think one thing that happens for a lot of people is they think when someone opposes their views or their beliefs don't align with them, that it's an attack on what they believe, right?
Yeah.
And the whole notion of right and wrong comes into it. It's like, oh, you believe that, like you're wrong, because I believe this and I think I'm right.
Yeah.
And that's not the way shit is, right? We can both have two very different beliefs about something, and they can be right for each of us, right?
And that's the important part. It's right for you and it's right for me, right?
And also, the fact that you believe something different to what I believe does not make you a shit person. But that's something that I feel a lot of people are, you know, put out on other people. They're like, oh, you believe that, so you're a shitty person. It's like, no, they just have a different belief to you. And maybe they think that about you. And if that's the case, how would you feel about that?
Yeah.
Right? Like, do you think you're a shitty person because of what you believe? Chances are not, because otherwise you probably wouldn't hold those beliefs. But that's what you're doing when you put someone else down for a belief they have, right? And I feel like that's going on a lot these days. And that's when like collectives are starting to shit on people that are standing up for what they believe in, right? And not to say that everything someone believes in is right or, or that it's wrong either. But, cancel culture is something that's massive these days, right? It's like, oh, you said this or you think that, so we're all just going to shut you out.
Yeah.
And it's fucking weird. Like, dude, that's fucking weird because you're just banding together and actually shutting someone down based on what you think. And you're essentially trying to stop them from having a platform or any way to voice what they believe, right? So you're trying to use like your collective might as a group to silence people.
Yeah.
And it's bullshit. It's bullshit.
It comes with this this attachment to right and wrong, this dualistic view of life, in that, like you said, and it's a very Western thing, right? In that, and I'm driven by, the yearning to know and understand everything, that whatever we understand and crystallizes as right, then opposes everything else outside of that as wrong. And like, if you hang on to these sorts of notions, of course, you're going to build and you're going to gather other people in numbers to support that. And that's what I guess the negativity behind it is. It's like, it's cool for you to have collective beliefs with people who share the same notions and values and principles as you, but also it doesn't mean that it is absolute in any sense,
And also it doesn't mean that you disrespect other people that don't hold the same view as you.
Absolutely. I think because there's a semblance of like domination and then I guess quietening other people that may overthrow your ideals and things like that, It's just a very protective way of going about things in terms of like shutting other people down.
And it's kind of like, how strong are your beliefs if you think that you need to shut someone else down in order for yours to exist? Maybe you should think about that. And I always think about it, it's treat people how you want to be treated. It's that basic principle of life, right? Like, if you're someone who does that, how would you feel if you had a belief and a whole group of people are trying to shut you down from voicing it or expressing it or living it, right? And I think about that a lot. Like, people tend to move and operate in a fashion that they would not want to be treated.
Yeah. And I think it's obviously a very, how to say, it is a very short-sighted way of looking at things, and maybe even tone deaf to a degree, and it's selfish, right?
Yeah.
But people are just this is the problem with I guess extremism and dogmatism towards ideals is that it is deluding to the degree that it can blind you from everything else around you,
And also, it's easy to get carried away. If you're not sovereign, if you don't know what your beliefs are, and if you're not prepared to, stand by them, operate by them, and hold your beliefs up in high regard for yourself, it's very likely you're going to get carried away.
Well, I think in that example, it's just that they a lot of the time people don't know what they want to stand behind,
and that's it.
Beside,
for sure.
So they can be easily pulled in one way, direction or another,
And that's why, by this notion of sovereignty, I feel is important, because then
absolutely
it helps you, to work out what is important to you. When you make the decision to be sovereign, right, to be responsible for yourself, you need to work out what's important to you. You need to work out what your beliefs are, and you need to work out what laws you're going to put in place for yourself.
Yeah. And I think in that sense, this is where like a inside out and a bottom up approach is the way to look at things, rather than, a top down collective dissemination of rule. Because we are all very different people, there is no denying that. And again, to be led by a top-down generalized manner is to, like I said before, give away part of yourself, of who you are as an individual, as a unique individual, and you can you can aggrandize that as much as you like. You can put yourself on a pedestal and say, I'm a fucking special person, right? And very different, and I'm going to achieve special things. Or you can just say simply that I am different to you. I may not achieve, quote unquote, great things in the eyes of a conventional success or whatever.
And the eyes of your collective.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But it doesn't matter. The point here is not, status or like, I guess, the height of your regard. It is simply that we are different and we are all here for different things, and that's it. It's very simple.
Yeah. And it's also like, you need to choose what you want to give power to. And I just find it pretty hard to make the choice of giving power to something outside of yourself.
Yeah, I mean, if you put
That's just me.
Yeah, no,
right?
Again, it's a very logical way of looking at things, right? Like, you want to hold your own power, like, to the fullest degree.
And, like, don't you want to be the hero in your own story?
Yeah, that's it. And, like, I think that, again, those sorts of things, they're really nice ways to, I guess, assist you along this path. But, like, if my truth is simply to be, a gardener and pull weeds all day, then that's my fucking truth, and no one should shit on that, And I should be someone who stands by that and lives with the greatest sense of contentment and fulfillment, because I am owning my whole truth and power of being a gardener. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I want to make that point clear, because a lot of the time people might think or misconstrue this notion of like regaining or upholding your own power, and you're going to be a fucking superhero, and
it doesn't have to be grand, like grand in the eyes of other people, right? Like, it's grand to you.
It will be grand to you.
That's the thing.
That's the thing.
Yeah.
It will be grand to you. Like, if you find your own truth, it doesn't matter what the fuck it is to anyone else. It is going to be the greatest thing, because like it's like the greatest alignment of heart, soul, and action. That's all there is to it,
dude. Like, we talk about this, but there is no greater gift you can give yourself than living life how you want.
Yeah, totally.
Right. And there's massive power in that.
Absolutely.
Because you're choosing to not conform to what other people have prescribed for you. No matter what that is, whether that's weeding or being, a garbage man, or all these sorts of professions that people tend to, talk shit on or look down upon. It's funny, man. I was actually talking to my mom about this last night. I'm like, man, I've never been ashamed of any job I've done to make money, right? That was like honest and ethical and moral, just because like that's what I wanted to do. And I truly respect people who do jobs that other people, tend to look down upon, because they've made a choice that in the face of like being judged, they're still going to do it because it suits them. Right? I respect that element of it. And I respect the fact that you are, happy to do honest work that other people don't want to do. And also the fact that we all need people to do certain things that we don't want to fucking do.
Totally.
Right? And also it shuns the facts that people that do certain jobs and make certain decisions are doing things for themselves that suit them, right? And helps them to progress and to live their life the way they want, right? Like someone might do a job that you think is a shitty job or isn't worthy of your respect, but that job enables them to do things in the times they want. They might want to spend time with their kids during the day, so they work at night. You know, they might sweep streets during the night, or they might clean toilets while their kids are asleep, so that, you know, when they get home, they can spend time with their children.
Yeah.
Because that's what's important to them. And that'll be fucking amazing if that's what's important to you, right? So, like, I also want to put that out. I think it's a very shitty thing to do, to shit on someone else for doing something that you don't think is good enough.
Yeah. Like, it is their mean to their ultimate end.
And you know what?
Who are we to judge
They
that,
could be way happier than you.
Totally. Well, that's the thing. I think that's a massive thing, right? Like, what you're talking about here is, it comes back to respect at the end of the day. But in terms of like happiness, you know, and contentment and fulfillment, right? And I myself have been someone who has been very fascinated with this general topic, right? And fascinated with, you know, how people generally go about and operate in their lives and think based on what they're chasing. And this is just like that old, like, hedonistic model, that hedonic treadmill, you know, that people talk about. Like, you're chasing happiness in something that is outside of yourself, right? Happiness is found within, right? I will fucking, like, you know, fight to the death with anyone who thinks otherwise. That happiness can be found outside of yourself, right? There can be experiences that you have, right, that will bring you happiness, but that still is an internal choice.
Yeah, because you experience that happiness based on what you believe and what you like.
That's right. So, like, that is something to think about in terms of this sort of notion of trying to find something outside, whether it is, you know, a group to conform with, or certain status to uphold or be held within from external eyes. All this stuff, right, is a fucking, it's a thankless endeavor for you. It truly is. And that hedonistic treadmill is the perfect fucking analogy for it. Or the hamster in a hamster wheel, whatever it is, you're just going to continue to run to the next thing, to the next thing, to the next thing, thinking that you're going to be happy. But if you just fucking dropped everything outside, you can be the most content person and live in a fucking cave.
Yeah.
You truly could.
Well, a lot of those external things that people do, right, it's based on their internal need for something.
Yeah.
Right? Like their internal need or desire for recognition and things like that.
Totally.
Right? And it talks exactly to what you're saying, which is like happiness comes from within, right? And like you said, there can be things that happen externally that make you happy. But like I said, it's making you happy because of what you've internalized as what is important to you.
That's right.
Not
and
it's not the outside thing. Yeah, it's not the outside thing that triggered the happiness.
That's right.
It's you already had this internal belief or this internal desire that has been met by whatever you experienced externally.
That's right.
And then you process that internally. You process that. You made choices about how you feel about it, and then that's when you felt happy or not.
Yeah.
So it's an inside job.
Yeah, totally. And like, you know, even if you think about if the counter was like, oh, what about, you know, the people you love and things like that? Again, those are the relationships that you've chosen to have in your life, you know.
And you love them for certain reasons.
Exactly. That's right. And that's, you choose to keep them in your life.
Yeah.
Right? That is your choice. And like, don't talk to me about, oh, what if it's your mother or your father or your son or whatever, right? It doesn't matter. Like, I'm stripping away all these labels. Like, I don't give a fuck. Like, okay, maybe that sounds a bit like, you know, cold or, you know, emotionless, whatever. But the point is, right, if those are the people that you choose to have in your life, then they're going to bring you happiness, or you have, they fulfill something within you, right, inside of you. And if they do the opposite, then you have a choice to let them go.
That's right.
You truly do.
That's right. And a lot of people don't, because of values that they have chosen to keep on holding on to within themselves, right? And that's a choice too.
Yeah.
You know, when someone in their family does something heinous and they're like, oh, but they're my family.
Yeah.
Like, you have the choice of whether you keep them in your life or not, like you said.
Exactly.
Right? And there are plenty of people that don't do that. And when you look at it from, you know, different perspectives, their lives are better for that. And, you know, not everyone is a good person. Not everyone does the right thing. People make plenty of different choices. And, you know, that's like one of those things is, and it might sound harsh, I have an extreme sense of loyalty to my family, but I also understand when other people aren't loyal to theirs for certain reasons, right? Like, because, you know, when people do really shitty things and someone's like, oh, but he's my brother. Yeah, man. You've inherited or learned or you've chosen to value that belief and hold it within yourself. You have that choice of having that belief or not.
Yeah.
Right? And maybe you need to think about why that's so important to you and of what else is going to be overridden based on that belief. And what else might not turn out for you the way you want it to based on those beliefs you hold. Yeah. Right? It's a dogma.
Totally. Yeah. And I think like even like these labels of family and things like that, like these things for me, they extend far, like much farther than, you know, simply those that you share blood with. You know, they truly do for me.
Yep.
Like, we are all humans and brothers and sisters, like, of the planet. Do you know what I mean? We're of the same species, and although we may have come from different parts of this globe, we are of the same earth, you know, and we come from this. We're like a part of the whole ecosystem, right?
Yeah.
And like, you will have relationships in your lives that you could feel so much closer and such a powerful bond than those that you've spent your entire life with.
Yeah.
And this is family to me. This is like the true family bond. It's someone that aligns with you, and you find someone or people who align with you, your values, your truths, your principles, and see you for who you are, and vice versa. And what I mean by that is, you see through the bullshit. You see, like, heart to heart. My heart sees your heart, and vice versa. And I don't see like any masks, or there's no need for that. You know, that for me is like real family.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. And that's your belief, and you've chosen that, right? And you have what I know is a better experience of life for yourself with holding that belief. And there's also certain beliefs that we learn, right, that we never question. Things like respect your elders, right? And like, there's very few people that will argue that. But dude, if I meet someone older than me that is a fuckwit, you're not gonna have my respect. And I don't think you should, just because you popped out of someone before I did.
Yeah, totally.
Right?
Totally.
I walk around and operate in life with that general belief that we should respect our elders because they tend to have more experience and wisdom than those of us that are younger, right? And I respect that. Is that you might have experience and wisdom that I don't have. And also you've had more experiences than I have, and there's value in that for me personally. But I choose that, right? And my belief, like, yeah, if
but
you're,
that doesn't make it absolute.
It doesn't make it absolute, and I chose that, right? And I've questioned it, and the point of that is like, it's my law to myself. I haven't just taken that belief and been like, and never questioned it. As in, like, that's just what you do, right? Like, there are plenty of people I know that are older than me that have done shit that I don't respect at all. And they don't have my respect, right?
Yeah.
And when I interact with them, I don't show them any respect because I don't have it. And I'm not going to act like I do.
Yeah.
Right? But and that's my choice. And I also don't let anybody shit on me for that choice. And that's one of the things that being sovereign is about to me. Right? It's like, I govern myself. You don't tell me how I get to feel about things. You don't get to tell me how I operate. You don't get to decide those things. I decide those things because I'm responsible for me.
Yeah. And again, like from an outside perspective or a general perspective, it can seem like a very righteous, way to operate, right? And I think that, again, these are types of conditioned perspectives that people have to essentially shit on people who stand up for what they believe in, and to speak their truth, because it is outside of the norm. It is not black or white. It's grey, and people don't like that. It's something that challenges status quo in certain respects, and it comes back to this clinging onto this semblance of normalcy, right? If it disrupts that, then it's not something that people generally like,
No, and it also puts into, like, when you question someone's belief, they feel like, oh, have I been wrong this whole time?
Yeah.
Right? And there's something to be said about that.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, people might feel defensive about those sorts of things, and especially like the way in which people may have been conditioned to look at things and hold these collective beliefs so dear to them that it becomes part of who they are, identity. And I guess this is what a lot of people, Eckhart Tolle would say, it's your ego, right? That's your ego identity. It's not really who you are per se. It's just this guise that has been built for you and generally the collective, so that we all sort of think along the same lines or believe along the same lines.
Yeah.
And and it's funny in that regard. I mean, if you think about it, it's not really who we are, but we that's the power of the mind in terms of building these delusional beliefs for us that we'd live and die for. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's fucking crazy to me. It truly is.
Yeah. So, yeah, man, I think we've covered a lot today on that topic. I'm sure we'll come back to it in different veins in other discussions. Is there anything else that you wanted to talk about that's coming to mind for you?
Yeah, I guess then to close off the topic, I mean, it's such a important thing to me, and I know it's important to you as well. And as we've been talking about more than ever, the world that we live in, it is demanding for people to stand up and be sovereign, and live for their own truths and speak that truth and live from a place of authenticity, but also with a great semblance of honor and respect to everyone else and their own truths as well. Like, once you operate in a way that is extreme and disrespectful, that is what creates, conflict and hate and all those sorts of emotions, right? So I always say, like, it doesn't have to be like fucking Rage Against the Machine, fuck you, I won't do what you tell me, although that's a fucking fantastic song. But, it doesn't have to be that way. You don't have to be so, it doesn't have to be an offensive thing to people, But to like regain your own power and be and have the honor to do that, and live through that energy of your life, in complete authentic expression of your truth. There is no greater thing in my mind.
No, there isn't. And choosing to exercise that power is important for yourself. It is. It really is.
So, to me, if people are fucking like, and I know that people are, always, there's always these questions about what the meaning of life is and all that sort of thing. It's inside you, man. That's it. And if you think that like, what is more important than your own life, realistically, right? In this physical manifestation of whatever you're living, of this existence, there is nothing more important. So it doesn't make sense for you to, dedicate your life to finding out your truth and then honoring that, It makes complete sense to me, and that's how I live every day. But, again, that's just my thing.
Yeah.
But
No, I think
something to chew on.
I think it's an honorable way to live, and also a fulfilling way to live.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
You choose to do so.
Yeah.
And I guess I just want to leave people with the notion of, have the courage to live your own life the way you want to live it. And don't apologize for it.
Yeah.
If you're not hurting other people in the process.
Totally.
Right? You mentioned that. I always say that. It's like, do whatever you want to do as long as you're not hurting other people. And if that's the case, I think you can be proud of who you are.
Totally. Because like you said, it does, and it's important to note, it does take courage to do it.
Yeah.
Like every action is, against the grain from a collective sense, but, it takes courage to do that.
It does.
But it's fucking beautiful, know?
And these are our conversations that we have, that we put out to the world, to try and provoke people to think differently, because when we think differently and we feel differently, we can act differently. We might have a better experience, right? And if you're someone who, does feel like you get trodden on for certain things you believe, or that you shouldn't for whatever reason, if you hold certain beliefs and they're not hurting other people by having them or exercising them, I strongly, strongly urge you to have the courage to live those out.
Yeah. Do you, man?
Yeah, man. Do you. And be proud of it.
Yeah.
Be proud of it, man.
Absolutely. I mean, there is nothing that is of greater pride that you should hold dear to your heart, to speak your own truth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So where can they find you, bro?
Yeah. On my website, just hit me up, findingspace.co. You can send me a message there, or check out any of my latest writings or our previous episodes of this podcast, or even some of my services. Also on Facebook and Instagram. Handle is @findingspace.co. How about you, bro?
Easiest place to find me is on Instagram. So just Shaun_Coop. So it's SHAUN_COOP. You can just hit me up there, send me a message. We can chat. We've also got our own email address for the podcast. So it's the Hustle and Flow podcast @gmail.com. If you've got any questions, anything you'd like us to discuss, perhaps you're someone who feels they want to jump on our podcast, just drop us a note there and we'll be in touch with you. And as always, guys, just a humble request. If you found some value in what we spoke about today, a little nugget, something that helped you or that you think would help someone else, please just share it with one other person, a friend, a family member, a colleague, someone that you feel might take something from our conversation and do something with it. Because as I mentioned earlier, we have these conversations to provoke thought and perhaps have you question some of your own thoughts and some of your own beliefs and think differently so you can act differently and perhaps have a different result that's better for you.
And, just to finish off, we've got, I guess we're on Spotify, Apple Podcast and Stitcher. So subscribe to us, and, if you would like, it would be helpful for us to, spread the word by leaving a review and, letting us know what you think about our podcast and ways we could improve if you would like. So, yeah, until next time, guys.
Thanks, guys.
See you later.